Hello and welcome to Horror Movie Roundup for February. I'm posting this pretty late. It will be in the middle of, or at the end of March by the time I post this, but obviously there has been delays in watching the movies since, coronavirus. We're in tough times, currently in Ontario. There are no movie theaters open anyways, so I don't know what I'll do for the future of the months, but the future months, but we'll see. A bunch of movies are getting delayed too, so it's kind of awkward. But I did finally watch all 3 movies required for this video, so we'll be talking about them. Technically it's 4 actually, since one was a sequel, and I didn't want, even though going into it I knew I wasn't gonna like the movie, I didn't want to watch it without watching its predecessor as a sign of respect, I guess. I don't know. But in general, this has been a better month, I guess, though not by a high margin. I wasn't super impressed by any of the films. I don't think I hated any of the films as much as last month, or January to be more specific, so also I've noticed out of the 7 movies from January or February horror movies, 6 out of 7 have been either remasters, reimaginings, or a sequel to something created. So there's only been one original movie being underwater, so I don't know, I don't like that. I don't actually have a big problem with reimaginings and stuff, but I do want to see more creativity, and it's kind of telling if 6 of the 7 movies aren't original ideas, right? But beyond that, we'll start with Fantasy Island. Alright, so Blumhouse Productions, Fantasy Island, whatever, Blumhouse put their name in front of it, I guess just to give it some traction, is actually connected to an old TV show called Fantasy Island, which I didn't know, but it's pretty much a classic, right? Which I think is kind of cute, this quote-unquote horror movie is a prequel to this, I don't know what type of show it is, but I'm pretty sure it's not a horror show. So I thought it was cute, but I've heard a lot of people say that this movie was just created so the company, whoever owns Fantasy Island, can keep the rights to it, which is obvious, which means there wasn't a lot put into it. And you can tell this movie is very, very boring. It wasn't painful to watch like some of the others, but it's just a boring movie, and I don't even know if I want to consider it a horror movie, because even in the typical boring Hollywood horror movie, you have these cheap jump scares that might get you for a second, but this one had one really bad jump scare at the beginning and nothing else. I don't think there's any horror elements really, except for the situation just being sort of a scary situation for the characters. Honestly, this was more of an action / thriller movie, in my opinion. That's the tone of it, how it felt because instead of the jump scares, there's a lot of sappy moments where they play sad music and you're supposed to feel bad for the characters, where in 90% of those moments I didn't care because I wasn't too interested in the movie itself. So it was a little sad. The camera work and editing was extremely flat and boring, which is my least favorite thing. If you're gonna have a bad movie, at least if I at least see some interesting work done, then I can tell they tried, but it really didn't feel like they tried. I think the actual idea of the movie is kind of cool, though. The idea of you go to a island to live out, and the owners and workers of the island somehow make you live out your fantasy. And it turns out that it's a twist, or whatever. It could have been like a kind of a cool anthology movie or something, but it just wasn't there for me. But again, I think the idea is not bad. I think the characters were also not bad. Like, I didn't hate any characters except for like one character, and it turns out it's fine to hate that character. So even like the dude bro characters, who I usually hate, like in reference to like Underwater, which I thought was the best of January, I hated that guy. I hated the dude bro character. And I'm glad he died early. But these guys, even though I initially hated them, I kind of liked them. And to go even further, I think the army guy was a good character. Or at least he's the only one I kind of felt sympathetic to. So yeah, I thought that was kind of done well. I think the plot twist was a good plot twist. Like thinking back to it, there's definitely evidence, and maybe it was because I wasn't too connected to the movie itself, I didn't notice them. But it was a fair plot twist that you could see coming pretty easily, but I didn't, so it was fine. But yeah, in general, it's just a very boring movie. I did see this in theater since it was out pretty early. I think Valentine's Day. And it was like the smallest theater I've ever been to. It was just me and one other guy, and I was at like the very top, and the other guy was at the very bottom. And there's like a couple, but then they left 10 minutes through the movie, which to be fair, I would never leave a movie, like, especially within the first 10 minutes. It seems a little unfair to it, unless they didn't pay for it or like somehow skipped in, but they seemed a little too old for that. But yeah, in general, I don't think this is a horror movie. It's more of a action thriller movie. It did nothing interesting. I mean, except for the characters, I guess. The story around it is fine, but it's just boring. Not worth watching. Definitely not worth paying to watch, at least. But yeah, I would recommend you do not watch this movie for whatever reason. There's definitely better alternatives for it. Next, we have Brom the Boy 2. But before that, I have to talk about this prequel. Now, I don't usually watch trailers, but because I have been going to a theater to watch movies, I obviously do. They do show horror trailers, and when I saw the trailer for Brom the Boy 2, it was like one of the worst trailers I've ever seen. I'm like, oh, this is gonna be the bad movie of the month. And I have to watch the prequel to it too for my complete viewing experience. So I was pretty depressed going into it. But surprisingly, I thought the prequel was a pretty decent horror movie. It definitely surpassed my expectations. I will be talking about the plot a bit for this one, just because it helps me critique the second one, because you have to kind of talk about it. And I do, if you for some reason are gonna watch Brom the Boy 2, I do suggest watching the first one. It's kind of important. But it was a nice little movie. I think the premise is pretty good. Like the idea that a rich family hires you as like a full-time babysitter, or whatever they're called, governess, to basically take care of a doll. It seems pretty creepy, like that situation itself. So I kind of like that. Just to know, dolls, like, you know, in the scope of horror, there's like clowns, there's like zombies or whatever. Dolls are like my the thing I'm least scared of. Like I could not care less about dolls. I think I've mentioned that before in a game I was playing, Mad Father, where there's dolls. Like, to me they look fine. I just don't get scared of it, and I wasn't scared of the doll itself. But Yeah, not too big of a fan of doll movies. But this was fine. Like the editing had some flair to it. Like I don't know what was with the editor, but he absolutely loved like blur shots. Like it's like blurry and then it focuses in on the shot, or vice versa where it's not blurry and then it blurs out. Like there's so many in the first half. And I was just like, why is he doing this? But to me, it shows that he thinks the editor's trying, at least. He thinks that's a super cool effect. So it kind of made me happy a bit to see that. And the twist was pretty good. I was not expecting it. I will say it just to reference it. But it turns out this creepy doll wasn't possessed. There was a creepy person living in the walls of the house, moving it and shit. So I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. It's nice. Like, I didn't expect that at all. I just thought it was going to be an Annabelle like possession thing, but and even though the hints aren't very apparent, the way that they handle the horror, like nothing happens on screen. Like the doll usually just like moves when it's out of frame or something. It's a good setup for it. I really like that. Obviously, there are problems with the movie, with the script. I think the pacing's pretty bad. Like, it's very slow. And once this cool twist happens, it's very rushed. And the acting's not great either. But I was pleasantly surprised. And I kind of enjoyed it. So, I mean, I don't think I enjoyed it enough to recommend it. Like, I still wouldn't say someone to watch it. But if you're looking for, like, a decently fine horror movie for some reason about dolls, since there's not a lot. I mean, there is, but if you're into doll movies, I guess this one would be better, though I did kind of just spoil it. But yeah, it's an alright movie. But talking about number two is pretty bad. I don't know how to compare it to Fantasy Island, because I think I enjoyed it more than Fantasy Island just because it was a horror movie and it did have some effective jump scares, but it wasn't good. And then there's a lot of points that I didn't like about it. First off, it doesn't need a sequel, right? It kind of had like an open ending for the first one where the killer was still alive. But this one it didn't need a sequel. And just from the trailer I saw beforehand, I knew this one was going to be supernatural. So it's like, why would this happen? Is the killer like now possessing the doll? And basically through the story, sorry I'm spoiling this one again, but I absolutely, with Fantasy Island, do not recommend this movie. They're kind of like retconning it a bit, or not really retconning, but revealing that that person wasn't crazy in the first one. It was the doll all along, making the kids crazy. So I kind of hated that, because I did think the first one had a neat little twist, and this one kind of ruined it. So it's bringing the first down with it. So I wasn't too happy with that. In general, it had the same sort of feeling as the first one. It didn't have that creepy premise of hiring a babysitter to do it, but like just a family looking after the doll. And it was just like the first one but worse, because in the first one, again, because there's this person controlling it, they made it very subtle. But this one, like, constant shots, you just see the doll head move, so you know that it's supernatural and stuff. They kind of pit it as or they try to pit it as it might be the mother's just imagining some of this stuff because she is a little traumatized. But they don't really do a good job, because even when she's not looking at it, it still does scary stuff, spooky stuff on screen. The other twist to the movie was fine, I guess. It wasn't good, though. I didn't really care about it. The actors were all bad. I think worse than the first one. I just didn't care about their characters at all. So there, it's almost just not redeemable. I mean, I think some parts of the camera work were okay. Like I kind of enjoyed it more than some of the boring movies from last week. Like I enjoyed how they handled it, and even though the weird editing from the first one wasn't in it, there was a little bit of neat stuff here and there. So I guess just that and some actual effective jump scares. Like I think one got me and two almost got me, which is more than some of the others. Make it like it's a bad horror movie. I'm not trying to say it's good, but it's not horrible. And I guess as a horror movie, it's better than Fantasy Island for sure, but I would never recommend it. Unless, again, you are a fan of dolls. Because I don't even know, is there a good doll horror movie? Like, maybe. But, yeah, it's not good. As expected, though. Also, this is just to note, this is the one I didn't see in theaters at all. Which is fine, honestly. I chose between this one and Fantasy Island, so I don't know which choice was right, because they were both pretty bad. I mean, I guess I would rather watch this in theaters than Fantasy Island. But yeah, to conclude this one, it's a better horror movie than Fantasy Island, but just as bad, I guess. And finally, I will be talking about... Is this another Blumhouse film? I should Google that. But it is a pretty well-regarded film. The new 2020 Invisible Man. So I did not watch the original Invisible Man movies. I know there's like some in the 1930s. Yeah, it is a Blumhouse film. Interesting. It's kind of amazing how just there's so many bad Blumhouse movies, and then sometimes they make like really good ones, or at least good ones. But this movie's getting a lot of praise. I mean, since I just Googled it, 7.3 on IMDb, 91 on Rotten Tomatoes. Like, people really love this movie. And I think it's a pretty good movie too. I don't love it as much as people do, but I definitely don't think it's bad. In fact, I will crown it out of the 7 horror movies that came out this year up to February as the best. It kind of beats Underwater a bit. There's a lot to like about it. I think the premise of an invisible, obsessive stalker is a pretty good premise. It's simple, but it's still very effective. Yeah, just the fear that since he's invisible, you never know if he's around is kind of cool. I was like, oh, that's... Again, it sounds simple, but it's pretty fun. I think the filming was kind of cool. There's a lot of, like, subtlety. Like, there's a lot of shots where it just pans over to an empty room and is like... And it makes you think, oh, is he there? Is he not? Let me look out for any clues. And sometimes there are clues and sometimes there's not. So it's very good at keeping the plot itself and the camera work. Does a very good job at keeping the suspense level high, I guess. I think later on, though, on the movie, it gets kind of weird. Not weird, I don't know. I do have some problems with it. Like, eventually you learn that he is using a suit, which, I mean, you probably would learn from the beginning sequence, but he does use a suit to turn invisible. They do kind of pit... I mean, not really. I was trying to say they do pit it as is she crazy or is this actually happening? But it's definitely happening, right? It's more of a everyone else thinks she's crazy. But there's just like the once very effective suspense is like, oh, he could be always watching you. Kind of gets less effective when you start having questions about the suit. It's like, oh man, he's definitely not there all the time, because how is he gonna pee out of that one-piece suit? And it's like, sometimes it looks like he has superhuman strength. It's like, oh, is it Is it giving him a boost in strength? Like, stuff like that kind of bothered me. There's like this kind of interesting scene with like a bunch of police officers getting badly injured slash killed. And it looks kind of cool, but at the same time it's kind of dumb because it's just like the police officers keep coming at two at a time. And they just kind of watch as each one of them gets killed. Like, they don't even just shoot in the air, even though they can't see him, but it would still be better than just watching and pointing the gun at the lady. Like, it's obviously she's not doing it right. So while I think like some of the subtle shots were pretty cool, once they kind of stop doing that and they get kind of deep into the plot where you know what's happening and where it's more actiony, I think the movie kind of loses its effect to me personally. I know some people might like that, but it wasn't very cool. It wasn't very good for me. Character wise, I think they did a pretty good job acting. I was pretty impressed by the main girl. I'm sure like for a lot of the scenes she had to like just, I don't know. I don't know what I'm trying to say. I thought she was fine though. It was an interesting story. I think the ending was kind of blah. Like, it was kind of a cheese ending, and I was like, whatever. But there are some cool things that they did with Invisible. I think one of my favorites is the restaurant scene. Without going into it, like, there's only one restaurant scene. I thought that was pretty slick, and I was like, oh, that's kind of nice. But yeah, I liked it. It was a good movie. I wouldn't watch it again, but I would recommend it, I guess. I don't know how it sets up to the original Invisible Man movies, but it was fine. It was good. It was good. I won't call it fine. It was a solid movie, and hopefully it will only go uphill from here, though I doubt it. So yeah, just a quick recap. Fantasy Island's bad. Bram is bad. This one is good. But I don't love it. I don't love it. Anyways, that's it for this month. I don't know how the other months will happen. I haven't even been keeping up with if anything's been released this month, but well, we'll see in the future. So if you're interested, come back. I'll be talking about movies or shows or whatever I've been watching, because this is stuff I've watched. Is that what I told it? I've already forgotten. Anyways, hope you enjoyed. If you have any opinions about these movies that you agree or disagree, or I mean, I guess if you just want to tell me about it, then I will respond. Otherwise, hope to see you next time.